Guys, welcome to this webinar. Our topic today is what is winning real estate investment strategies and where do you come from? And I wanted to take a little bit of time, first of all, to thank you guys for showing up. I appreciate it. We had a bunch of people register, but and we still have quite a few of you guys here. We're thrilled to have you guys here. Let me give you a little bit about my background so that you guys can kind of understand who I am and why I might have an opinion that matters. And maybe that's enough to disqualify me from being on this podcast or the webinar. But the reality is, guys, I'm a second generation builder, developer, and a fourth generation realtor. I've been in the real estate business for 27 years with my own companies. I've done over $200 million worth of development and construction, both for myself and other people. I've closed on over $250 million in transactions on my own. And that's everything from apartments to industrial to development deals, subdivisions, all kinds of things in between. And I've done everything. I mean, my first real estate transaction back before it was known as a flip was a simultaneous close. I was 22 years old, and at that point I was hooked. I made a connection and I was able to get that done. So I've done every part of this game, and I wanted to kind of bring you a couple of the best out there. But I just wanted to give you my background first. I think the number one complaint, for a long time from 2008 till about 2015, real estate wasn't sexy. Nobody wanted to hear about it. Nobody wanted to be involved with it. Nobody wanted to be an electrician. Nobody wanted to be a plumber. And now that it's back to being a hot topic, or people are starting to wonder what's going on, I think the number one complaint is, how does it work? A lot of people don't understand how real estate investing works. They understand how to purchase their home, and a lot of people have the misconception that their home is their single largest asset, when it can be if that's all you want to do. But the other complaint that we're hearing in the market right now is lack of supply, pricing being too high, and the next one is it going to crash again? So those are I think the three complaints that I'm hearing in the market right now. And the answer to those is, if you'll get information, if you'll educate yourself, you will be able to answer all of those questions for yourself. The market is cyclical. The market goes up, the market goes down. The market is not that difficult to understand because it's a series of patterns and they tend to repeat themselves. The market allows you, looking back on it, we all saw what was happening in 2008. We were all just looking at, the future, and the future being just like today. And so we didn't pay attention to a lot of the things that we're paying attention to now. We were able to change some of the mortgage situations that happened. A lot of people woke up in 2008 in a quote unquote underwater mortgage, where their house was worth far less than their mortgage was because of a particular type of loan that they signed. And that was an uneducated scenario. They didn't understand what they were getting. What they saw was that they could buy a McMansion for $3,000 a month, and when the full price came due, they weren't able to afford it. So there was a lot of things that happened there, but I think that the biggest takeaway is that if you're going to get into real estate, get educated, spend the money on the education, and learn from people that are doing it, that not necessarily a guru that's going to sell you a course or something, but get around people who are doing what you want to do and learn how to do what they're doing.
Yes.
Sure. There's, if you break it down into basic ones, there's the ones that people all hear about. There's a gentleman named Beardy Brandon. That's what he's branded himself. I saw him last week at a conference in Dallas, Texas, and he launched the Bigger Pockets podcast, and he came up with this term called the BRRRR, the BRRR, and it's probably one of the most popular, at least one of the most talked about strategies on how to do it. And what that is buy, remodel, rent, refinance, and repeat. And that strategy is designed around buying a not so desirable house, buying one that is a 1970s model, renovating it, turning it into something that you see on, the Lifetime channel about, taking it from this to that, or the Home Improvement Network channel. where you've created the value in it and you bought it for 100 grand and you put 10 or 15 in it, and it's now worth 170. You refinance it out after you've rented it. You're getting cash flow. You're getting all of your money back out in the refinance because you were able to increase the value, and you repeat and you go and you do that again. And a lot of people like that strategy, except it involves a lot of work. It involves finding that beat up house. It involves finding something that is undervalued or underappreciated because it's ugly, right? You've seen those signs alongside the road, we buy ugly houses. Well, that's their strategy. They're trying to buy that house, they're trying to renovate it, they're trying to make it cute, they're trying to make it modern. But what if you're somebody like me that doesn't want to spend my nights and weekends painting and remodeling and finding a beautiful tile that matches here and replacing the pink toilets with something else? I mean, those are none of those things sound fun to me. And I know that that's funny. People that know me, I have a construction and development company, and I don't like remodeling. I did one, only one, right? That was enough to teach me that I didn't want to do that anymore. So a lot of people look at it and they go, well, I've got to do the burr because I've got to buy this ugly thing, and I can get, and there's some great lending programs out there, right? The 203K is a fabulous loan because you can get the money to fix the house. In the 203K, you're not allowed to be the contractor, right? You're not allowed to be related to the contractor. So you have to hire a contractor. In a lot of cases, that's really good because then you're going to get it done by a qualified professional, and the lender is securing that. And you're able to get the funds for the house and the remodel without having to involve a hard money lender or any of those additional steps that might be necessary. And so you're able to deal with that and be successful at the burr strategy that allows you to do that as a newbie and get in on some of that upside. Right now, though, with the market being what it is, it's really hard to find those houses. It's really hard to get in line to be able to buy those. And then a lot of people see that you want a 203K loan and they're looking for the cash buyer. So there's some difficulties that come with that. And it's, while it's one of the most talked about strategies, it's also one of the most labor intensive strategies, which for a lot of people who want to be real estate investors, want to be real estate they want to put their money into something that is active and growing and creating cash flow. They don't really want to be tied up and give every waking moment for the next 2 to 7 months, depending on your calendar. It might be 2 to 14 months, but they don't want to put all that time into it. So they feel like they can't be involved in real estate because that strategy doesn't fit them, right? Demi, another strategy that a lot of people like to focus on is the subject to. And a lot of people think that that is kind of a desperation move where people are wanting to sell and they're subject to foreclosure. That's not really what subject to means. Um, Subject to is more of a strategy to put yourself in control of the asset, even though you're not on the loan. And there's a lot of people that go into the wholesaling game and then get into the subject to game where the current owner who has the loan or maybe owns it free and clear decides that they want to give control of that to someone else. You have come in and you've talked to them, and you know what? We're moving back east. We don't like it out here in the west. It was my grandmother's house and she's passed away and I just need to get rid of it. And the subject to strategy allows people to come in and be able to come to terms with someone. And there's a lot of reasons why people would want to do terms. Maybe they don't want to sell it right away. Maybe they want cash flow. Maybe they're in a situation where they're 5 or 6 years away from retirement. So they're in a high income bracket right now. While they need to get rid of the asset, get rid of the payment, deal with all of that, they don't want to harvest that capital that they have there because they'd be hit with a high tax bracket. Whereas if they wait till a little bit later, that may help them a little bit more. So there's a lot of different reasons why a subject to would be a great strategy for not only the seller, but for the buyer. For the buyer, it allows you to come in and create terms that doesn't allow or doesn't require you to get a formal loan. So you would take the property, subject to the current loan, subject to the current lien holder. And if that's a free and clear property, it may be subject to a, a, a debt that you set up with the current owner. So that allows people to come in with little or no money down and put value into that. I've seen a lot of people who come across a property that is pretty run down. There's a lien against it. It's going to take some work. They've got about $20,000 in capital, not enough to buy it, put the down payment on it, fix it. Maybe they don't want to go through the 203K program, so they decide that they want to um, buy this property subject to, the seller agrees that they want to sell it subject to, and then the person spends the money to renovate it. Give them 2 or 3 years to get it stabilized and then refinance them out. There's a lot of reasons why subject to works, and it's a great strategy for people who are wanting to put in not necessarily all the time into remodeling, or maybe want to start with the wholesaling process. And once they have those, then find out which ones of those can go subject to. But it allows you to put yourself in control of assets that you're not having to take down the loans on. So someone with shaky credit, maybe some black marks in your past, is able to do that. And I worked with a couple of guys that do a lot of that subject to stuff. I've actually bought on subject to, and I've sold on subject to. So it worked for me in both of those situations, and it's something that I've done. And in a lot of cases, when we buy a new piece of property that we do development with, we are buying it subject to. So when we find a brand new piece of ground, usually the seller of that property is wanting top dollar for it, right? They see that it's going to be a new shopping center, and they know that that's what it's going to be, and so they look around and they go, well, retail space, retail in the shopping area, that ground should go for $10 a foot, so I want $10 a foot. A lot of times I will come in, and instead of arguing about the price, I will buy it subject to the entitlements. So I go into contract with them, I lock it up. 12 to 18 months later, when those entitlements are done, I close on the property. So subject to doesn't only have to fit it's not only about housing, right? It can be subject to on a retail center. It can be subject to on other things. I think I just got a text from my son. I think he just put a airplane hangar under contract subject to. So it's a great strategy where maybe you're looking for some sort of terms there, and the seller is also willing. And a lot of times, just overcoming their objections and helping them to understand what it's about is a great way to get to that subject to, and make that a win-win for everybody. Some of the downsides to that is not everybody wants a subject to. Not everybody, typically subject twos are off-market deals. So you've got to get creative. You've got to find ways to attract those people. You've got to find communications. You've got to have communication skills that allow you to get past their objections and help them understand why subject to might be a great option for them. So that's another great strategy for people to employ. And a lot of those are typically for the more advanced real estate investor who has more time, and typically a full-time person to do those kinds of things. So the next strategy that I would talk to people about is just the turnkey, right? This is the one where you're buying a brand new house or you're buying a completely remodeled house. In a lot of cases, people get turnkey rentals from property management companies. Maybe the property management company has a person that they're working with that now wants to sell it. The tenant doesn't really want to move. Everybody's happy with the situation. It's just a time to recapitalize. And so they decide they want to sell it. So the property management company goes out and looks for someone that wants the rental, wants the write-offs, wants the investment opportunity, but doesn't want to deal with any of the hassle. This is especially popular with people who have high income jobs. They're looking for the tax advantages that real estate offers. We all know about depreciation. We all know about the write-offs of real estate. We all know about the tax deferred growth that happens currently. Right now, you're able to 1031 out of that and continue that tax deferment. And there's still opportunities for investments into opportunity zones and things like that that are tax advantaged. So there's a lot of reasons why people want to get involved in real estate. but none of the things that we've talked about prior are exciting to them. They don't want to be the remodel king. They don't want to spend all their weekends at Home Depot. They don't want to be building decks and patios and painting and laying tile and all that kind of stuff. And they don't want to be spending hours on the phone trying to find buyers and sellers and do subject to. And so they opt for this really simple strategy that is just turnkey. When you look at the strategies that we've talked about so far, I would think that the BRRRR strategy is going to be very inexpensive to get into with good credit. The subject two is going to be pretty low cost, low overhead to get into with little or no credit. The turnkey requires you to have good amounts of both. You've got to have good capital and you've got to have good credit. So you're going to typically be putting 10 to 20% down on a subject to property, or sorry, with the turnkey property. 20% if you want to avoid mortgage insurance, right? And then you're going to have the property management company deal with it. They're going to take care of everything. It's going to be very, very hands off, except for the cashing of the checks. That will be your only requirement there. That and getting the information to your accountant so she can make sure that you're getting full records of all your deductions and everything that you're doing there, so that you can see what you're getting and see how that's helping out your taxes, right? So at the end of the day, that is an opportunity for people to be involved in a great real estate strategy, because you're still getting the growth, you're still getting the cash flow, you're still getting the appreciation, depreciation that's happening with your real estate. And as all of us know, those people that bought houses in 2000 have seen great appreciation over 20 years. They've seen great cash flow appreciation over 20 years. Maybe they bought something in 2009, 2010. They've seen some great appreciation there. I know of anybody that's been hanging on to real estate since the peak in 2007 is now back in the saddle. They have appreciation in their home. It went through the bottom and came back out the other side. And typically they've received at least some sort of cash flow along the way, along with the tax benefits of that. So that's another great strategy for people who want all of the benefits that real estate provides with none of the effort and headache. But just like everything else, if you want to go to the grocery store, buy all the ingredients and take them home, you can make your own hamburger for cheaper than you can buy one in a nice restaurant. But then again, you got to do the dishes when you're all done too. So turnkey is another really great option for that. Well, and that's where a lot of people are still having trouble right now, like we discussed with the three problems that people are having in the market. When you bring it back to it, it's still hard to find a turnkey property that cash flows, right? I mean, I know that in our market in Idaho, buying a house and getting it to cash flow is very difficult. You're able to get it to cash flow in year three, but year one and two, it struggles to cash flow. And in order to get it to cash flow in year two and three, you've got to bet on the market that it's going to continue to do what it's already doing. And that's where a lot of people get hung up, because that was what a lot of people were doing in 2008, 2007. And we all saw what happened there when people were trying to buy and speculate on housing. The last strategy that I want to bring up real quick that I think combines a lot of all of these strategies in a fairly hands-off scenario is syndication. And a lot of you know what syndication is. Some of you don't. Syndication is where there is a general partner who acquires an asset, whether that's a shopping center, whether that is, and whether that general partner is a REIT, whether that's a private investor, and takes that asset and allows partnership through a limited partnership with other people who have cash but don't want to deal with any of those things. REITs are very involved in syndications. They call it selling shares. So they have assets under management. They sell shares to the property sell shares in their company on the NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange. But as a syndicator, it allows you to raise capital, and as a limited partner, it allows you to be active, or as active as you'd like and as inactive as you'd like, in a real estate investment that it has some scale to it. One of the dangers of single family homes, even duplexes and fourplexes, is that if you have a duplex and one person moves out, you have a 50% vacancy. If you have a fourplex, I don't need to do the math for you, you've got a 25% vacancy. And so when you're looking at syndication, typically they're larger commercial assets. They're apartment complexes, they're retail centers that are several, if not multiple millions of dollars. And what happens in those syndication scenarios is people are able to get involved on the limited partner side with investments as some as small as $25,000, and they join a pool of people. Syndication is really just a fancy word for partnership. The general partner does all the work, does all the heavy lifting, and for that gets a return at the end. The limited partners do usually none of the work, none of the heavy lifting, but they show up with most of the capital that's necessary. They form a partnership, rules and regulations. Because it is a financial transaction, the SEC gets involved. There's a great rule book that goes with all that. But at the end of the day, those are cash flowing assets. And you see that typically what happens in a large scale apartment complex is people are able to get into cash flow very, very quickly and have limited downside on what happens when there's a vacancy. You're also dealing with professional grade property management companies and property managers and handymen that are all really well schooled in taking care of a large scale asset. And so what you're able to do is you're able to diversify your portfolio into something that allows you to participate in something as old as, I mean, I've seen syndications that are on historic buildings. I've seen syndications on shopping centers. I've seen syndications on 800 unit apartment complexes in the Miami area here where I'm at today. And so there's an opportunity there for people to be involved in that. One of the most famous syndicators out there right now is Grant Cardone. I'm not asking you to like him, guys, but he is one of the most prolific fundraisers, and he's raised almost 100, I think it's over $100 million on social media. And he's done that by leveraging who he is and showing people the opportunity, where he has now negotiated a purchase price of a $50 million or $70 million apartment complex. He needs to raise a 25% capital stack that he allows that to go out to the limited partners. They come in with that capital stack. They supply the necessary equity, as it's called. He gets a first loan on the property. He puts in very little, but he does all the heavy lifting, does all the negotiating, brings his team to the table. At the end of the day, it's a very, very hands-off operation for all the people that are involved that allows them to go about their daily lives and get their checks. The conference I was at this last weekend, Grant happened to swing by, and he was saying that they are sending out $1 million a month in payments to their capital partners. And so it's like the turnkey, it's like the subject to, because you're not signed on the loan. The only thing that you really have at risk in a syndication is your original capital. It's not like they're going to come back to you and go, hey, let's see, Taylor Weeks, I see you there. You signed on this loan and it didn't go well, so we're going to ask you to guarantee it and we're going to want our money back. So there's things in there where you can see the downside but mitigate that through a syndication. Also, it puts you in alignment with usually very experienced partners, because banks don't like risk. Banks want to vet that. Banks want to make sure that if they're going to loan somebody $10 million, that person has the track record for that person has the property management company in place that has the track record for that. I know that when we've talked to people, talk to our banking relationships about that, they've always been very, very concerned about who's managing the property, because they want to make sure that at the end of the day, the property that they've loaned all this money on is in good hands. That kind of caps the 4 strategies that I think are awesome. That's the BRRRR strategy, the subject to strategy, the turnkey strategy, and then finally the strategy of syndicating capital and being involved in a GP-LP situation in that regard. So those are my 4 strategies, guys. I hope you got value out of that. As you know, Idaho is arguably one of the hottest markets in the nation. I think our friend from Raleigh, North Carolina would be probably one of the few people on today that I would argue with that might be hotter. And it really just comes down to numbers, right? We are a growing metropolitan area of MSA of about 800,000 people. Raleigh is obviously much larger. But what we've got going on is, Gilbert, I'll help you so you don't have to ask that question. But we've got a 190 unit apartment complex that we're breaking ground on right now. We're underway currently on two Opportunity Zone multi-tenant industrial buildings. Unbeknownst to a lot of people, Meridian, Idaho has a huge industrial opportunity, or has a huge opportunity zone that is a lot of bare ground in the industrial space, and with a huge need for that, less than 1% vacancy in that. We've taken the opportunity. We have two of those going right now, getting ready to start a third, all opportunity zone projects. We also have a 60 unit apartment complex that goes before City Council on Monday or Tuesday of next week, and we'll get approval for that. We've also got about 600 doors in our pipeline. We're working on a project right next to Walmart. We've got some other stuff that's coming. We're pretty excited. We're also in the process of repurchasing a 180 unit asset that is stabilized, brand new. It's a year and a half old. Repurchasing that and bringing investors into that. So that's going to be a phenomenal opportunity that we're going to have, as well as a couple other value adds in the Phoenix market. We're stepping out into that market, and also in the Boise, Idaho market, we're taking on some value add products. So lots of exciting stuff happening here, that we can have an offline conversation about, and we'll show you ways that you guys can be involved in that. You can find me on most of the social media places. I think a lot of us connected here on LinkedIn. We can have a conversation, set up something in our calendar, have a video call. I love to get to know everybody before we invest. I'm not really interested in just having investors. I want to make sure that we have similar goals. I want to make sure that what you're looking at is the right investment for you, to make sure that at the end of the day, we've got happy investors, right? Because that is what we're really trying to do here. So those are things that we can do. We can definitely set up a call. We can get to know what your needs and your wants are, what your current situation is, and what your goals are. Make sure that we can get that handled for you. If you're refinancing the project and getting your cash back, that is a non-taxable event. If you're disposing of the property and selling the property, then you have a taxable event. But there are quite a few ways to deal with that. And for everybody here, I'm not an accountant. I do not give tax advice. I can talk scenarios all day long, but they're hypothetical in nature. As a passive investor, what we're doing right now in a syndication that we're going to be exiting in the next 18 to 24 months is we are going to offer two options. One, our investors can 1031 with us from that syndication into another syndication. I know that there are also people that aren't going to want to go with us. They're going to want to go their own direction. So we can do what's called a stop and drop, where a couple of days before closing, we dissolve the LLC. And we can talk about this offline. I can get into the weeds here pretty quickly. But then you can go your own way and go into another single asset by yourself. But typically, what you're looking at right now is that syndications are providing fantastic returns. And if you're getting your funds back in a refinance situation, there's nothing tax wise to look at. If you're getting them back because of a disposition, then you're going to have to deal with that. A 1031 is a great way to do that. Getting involved in a new product that allows for that bonus depreciation up front. If you can do that in the same calendar year, where you get out of one, get into another, and take that bonus depreciation, you can offset a lot of those gains, Bill. Yeah, and I want to thank everybody for showing up. I hope it's been of value to you. If you've got other questions or you want to talk further, I'd love to do that. I've got a calendar that I have all kinds of time in. We can set up a 15-minute video chat. I like to get to know people. So this is kind of a one-way conversation. You guys get to see me, but I don't get to see you. I'd like to have those face-to-face conversations. So I look forward to that, guys. And I really, honestly, truly do appreciate your time on this Friday afternoon. I know we've all got other things that we could be doing, and I thank you for choosing to spend your time with me.